the last thing we're talking about, we realize that power rarely arrives with a declaration. It arrives quietly. Or you need me to adjust that? Okay, I'll help you just touch your collar, okay? It arrives quietly. It settles into the background of system, into the architecture of institutions, into the design of technologies, into the invisible rules that govern everyday life. It shapes what is seen, what is stored, what is remembered, and perhaps most importantly, what gets to decide, who gets to decide. Because in every era, the most valuable resource is rarely, the one people talk about first. There is such a thing as crowd engineering. In the 19th century, it was land. In the 20th century, it was oil. In the 21st century, it is information. Suffice it to say, invincible, continuous, infinitely reproducible, but never neutral. Never neutral. I repeat, in the 21st century, what we have going for us is information. And information is invincible, is continuous, infinitely reproducible, but is never neutral. Tonight, we step away from the surface of the digital revolution and examine the deeper architecture beneath it. Because behind every notification, every digital payment, every search query, uh, every satellite signal, there is an infrastructure of power. And that infrastructure raises a question that Africa and the world has barely begun to confront. Who owns the data produced by the entire continent called Africa? Who owns the data? Is Africa just a passive user? Who stores it? Who analyzes it? Who monetizes it? The data produced in Africa. Who monetizes it? And who ultimately governs the systems that make the digital economy possible? I'm Chioma Lina, by the way, and this is the Bold Angle. Now back to our conversation. In our previous episode, we explored well, the episode before the last one we did explore the modern scramble for influence across Africa, which nobody is in doubt of that. And the last episode we talked about who owns Africa's data, but now we're trying to still expand it more because it's a question that needs to be answered. Tonight we examine something even more consequential, which uh, continue to examine actually something more, even more consequential. And it's not territory, it's not minerals, but the resource quietly shaping the future of economics, power, and global power. I'm talking of no other thing than data. And there is something that for me is in tandem that goes line in line with it, because this is the story of digital sovereignty. It's not just any story. It's a story of digital sovereignty. Again, we ask who owns Africa's data? Looking at the 21st century, can we take a moment to actually analyze the strategic resource? And yeah, permit me, some of the things you might hear me say, because it's on my mind, might be offshoot of what I might have said in the last one, because it has to just keep coming. It's here. It's in the heart. The global economy has always been organized. You agree with me? You agree with me on that? The global economy has always been organized around control of trades, control of resources, control of infrastructure. In the industrial era, oil became the lifeblood of economic power. The lifeblood of economic power. Control the oil fields and you influence markets. Simple as that. Control the oil fields and you influence the markets. You control the shipping lines and you shaped geopolitics. But the digital age has actually introduced something different. And my friend, if you're listening to me and you're not keen on data, you're not keen on social media like I used to, I wasn't really not into that social media thing, like I called it. But it's important. This digital age has introduced something different and you need to go with the wave. A resource that is not drilled from the ground. It's not generated by behavior. Every search query, every GPS signal, every mobile payment, every biometric scan, every hospital record, every hospital digital record, every school enrollment database, every social media interaction, all of it produces data. All of it produces data. So it's not something you just say, it's not, it doesn't concern me. It concerns you and you need to know how it flows. And data does not simply record reality. That's the thing. Data doesn't record reality. It predicts it. When aggregated at scale, data becomes the foundation for, say, artificial intelligence, financial risk models, things like, give me something, public health planning, things like urban development, political micro-targeting, military intelligence. So I name it again. I said data becomes the foundation for, say, military intelligence, financial risk models, artificial intelligence, public health planning, urban development, political micro-targeting. The countries and corporations that control massive data flows do not simply understand the world. They shape how it operates. They don't just swallow what it is that is being given. They shape how it operates, which means the real question is not just how much data Africa produces. It's not how much data is produced in that area, in that region, in that location. The real question is, who controls the system that who controls the systems? Who controls the systems? Who controls the systems that process it? Who controls the system that processes it? Is it just flowing here and there? No. Who controls the system that processes it? Okay, let's take a moment to look at Africa's digital acceleration. Over the past decade, right, Africa has, you say, experienced one of the fastest digital transformation anywhere on earth. Anywhere on earth. You can argue that if you want to. But the truth is, Africa has actually experienced one of the fastest digital transformations. Wow. Connectivity is expanding. Smartphone adoption has surged across urban and rural communities. You can't deny that. Mobile banking systems have brought millions of people into the financial system for the first time. You will go to some villages, some rural areas, you will see a grandma who is trying to operate. How does this go? Digital entrepreneurship is rising rapidly across the continent. Technology ecosystems are growing in cities. I mentioned the last time, I'm going to reiterate again. In cities, the technology is rising, called Nairobi, Cairo, Lagos, Cape Town, Accra. You can talk of a city like Kigali. And when you look at all of this, you will find out that young developers are building fintech platforms, AI startups, logistics networks, digital marketplaces. International investors have taken notice. Venture capital flowing into Africa tech has grown dramatically over the past decade. And actually, many sectors, Africa is not simply adopting technology, it is innovating new models. Africa is innovating new models, mobile money systems, digital identity platforms. You look at cross-border fintech solutions, or are you going to also neglect? But in all of this, you find out that beneath the excitement of this digital expansion lies a structural question rarely asked in public debates. We'll take a break and I'll be right back. And please, before we took that break, I said that beneath the excitement of this digital expansion lies a structural question rarely asked in public debates. Who owns the foundations of the digital ecosystem itself? Because applications are only one layer of the digital economy. Underneath them sits the infrastructure, and infrastructure determines control. And yes, you're welcome back. We're still trying to analyze who owns Africa's data, who owns the data to which you're using, you're part of, directly or indirectly. Can we try to analyze the architecture of the internet? When we talk about the internet, it's easy to imagine something abstract, a cloud, a virtual world. But the internet is not abstract, it's physical. It is cables, satellites, server farms, energy birds, energy, I call them birds, energy grids. You might not understand that, but that's an in-house joke. Energy grids, data centers, transmission towers, undersea fiber lines oceans, stretching across oceans, stretching across oceans. Because I needed to help me, sorry for that disruption. When someone, take an instance, when someone in Lagos sends a message to Nairobi, right, that message travels through an immense global network of infrastructure. And much of that infrastructure is owned, financed, or operated by actors outside the continent. So you send a message in Nairobi, another person receives it. There's a transaction that's happened, but the person who is manning it, who is governing it, is not in the city where you sent it. Global cloud companies host vast amounts of African data. Submarine cable networks like African internet traffic to global hubs. Satellite systems provide connectivity across remote regions. Foreign belt platforms host government databases, corporate systems, and personal communications. This creates a structural asymmetry. Africa generates enormous quantities of digital information, but the systems that store and process that information are often located elsewhere. And when data crosses borders, so does jurisdiction, which raises complex questions. Whose laws apply? Whose courts have authority? Whose intelligence agencies have access? This is not a conspiracy theory at all. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a structural feature of the modern digital economy, and it has profound implications for sovereignty. We need to begin to analyze some technology policy um, look at things that cybersecurity strategists would want to tell us, hoping that they are open about it. And the key questions that we are trying to explore here is, should countries require data generated domestically to be stored domestically? Should your country, my country, require that data generated domestically in that country stored in that country? What are the economic trade-offs between global cloud efficiency and national data sovereignty? Can African nations realistically build independent digital infrastructure? What leverage? What leverage does Africa have in negotiations with global technology giants? What leverage? This conversation actually explores the fundamental policy tension. Openness accelerates innovation, but complete dependence can limit sovereignty. So where's the balance? Where's the balance in all of this? Let's try and examine platforms and narrative power. Infrastructure determines where data flows. Am I correct? Infrastructure determines where data flows. Platforms determine how information spreads. Social media platforms influence public discourse. Search engines shape knowledge discovery. Recommendation algorithms influence culture, they influence politics and consumer behavior. Because a particular politician, take an instance, that your algorithm keeps bringing on his goodness that is posted on social media. Is what you see. So algorithms influence politics and consumer behavior. These systems, you'll notice, are not neutral. They are designed. They are designed. Every algorithm reflects priorities. Every algorithm reflects priorities. I beg your pardon. They reflect engagement, advertising revenue, user retention, and you would agree that data accumulation is not left out. So, in regions with young, digitally engaged populations, the influence of these systems, like I reckoned before, is enormous. It is enormous. Narratives can spread faster than institutions can spread. This information campaigns can target vulnerable audiences. Political messaging can be micro-targeted with precision. Election cycles can be shaped by information flows that originate far beyond national borders. Digital space has actually become geopolitical space. And the rules governing that space are largely written outside the continent. They are largely written outside the continent. Or let me put it in a better way. They are largely written outside that region. Now let's bring up some case study. I would do more than one case studies. Across Africa, several recent developments highlight the power of digital platforms. The rapid rise of mobile money ecosystems has transformed commerce. Election cycles in multiple countries have seen waves of online misinformation. Governments and multinational companies are now debating how digital platforms should be taxed across borders. Each case reveals the same underlying dynamics. Digital systems increasingly shape public life, but the governance frameworks are still evolving. Around the world, now this is us taking, I want to believe we understand that. You do. Okay, I'm going to reiterate the last one. I said the governance frameworks are still evolving. Digital systems increasingly shape public life. It's no, it's not a mystery anymore. Now, around the world, governments are investing heavily in digital surveillance technologies. That's why you see some countries do some things and impute some people, into some other countries. So there's surveillance, security, and civil liberties. Sometimes it looks like a breach. It looks as if there's a breach. Facial recognition systems, telecommunications, monitoring tools, predictive policing software, border analytics platforms. These technologies can strengthen national security. They can help prevent crime. They can support public safety, but they also expand state power. They also expand state power. And in societies where democratic institutions are still consolidating, the safeguards surrounding these tools become critically important. Digital sovereignty is often framed as protection from foreign control, but true sovereignty also includes protection from domestic abuse of power. I repeat that. True sovereignty, true sovereignty, true sovereignty, TRUE sovereignty also includes protection from domestic abuse of power. A lot of times, some nations are witnessing currently abuse of power by the people in government, by the people not in government, but they are in government, but they are not seen. Because the question is not simply whether surveillance tools exist. You can't be asking if they exist. The question is who oversees their use? Mhm. Who audits the algorithms? Who protects citizen privacy? Who audits algorithms? Who is auditing the algorithm? The privacy. Who actually protects citizens' privacy? I want you to really assimilate this. If we get a tech entrepreneur, a public policy analyst, a digital rights advocate, which I know you're one of those, let's try and center our discussion around how Africa balances technological growth with democratic accountability and digital rights. So can we look at the strategic opportunity? Because despite the challenges, Africa occupies a unique position in the digital transition. Much of the continent's digital infrastructure is still being built, is still under construction, which means the regulatory frameworks governing it are still evolving. The frameworks heading this are still evolving. That creates a window of strategic opportunity. African policymakers can still be shaped. They can still shape data protection laws. African policymakers, I say it again, African policymakers can still shape data protection laws. They can. They can shape regional digital agreements. They can shape local cloud infrastructure investments. African policy makers can still shape Pan-African interoperate, how do I put it, interoperability standards. They can shape the cross-border digital taxation models. In other words, the digital economy of Africa is not yet locked into a single model. Do you know? It's not locked into a single model. Choices made in the next decade could determine whether Africa becomes a producer of digital value or merely a supplier of raw data. Let's bring in the youth factor here. Let's bring in the youth factor. Africa is the youngest continent on earth. You could go do your research. Africa is the youngest continent on earth. And that demographic reality will shape the digital future across universities, across tech hubs, online communities. You find that millions of young Africans are learning to code, design systems, build platforms, and experiment with artificial intelligence. They are not simply users of technology. Mm-mm. They are creators of it. Young Africans are creators of it. But talent alone is not enough. It's not enough. Innovation ecosystems require capital, it requires infrastructure, it requires policy stability, it requires the education systems to be aligned with digital skills. Am I correct? Without those systems, talents migrate. Talents migrate. With them, talent transforms economies. And if a particular talent have left this geographical location and moves to another place, it influences where it is. As simple as that. The next generation will determine whether Africa participates in the digital economy or leads part of it. I say that again. The next generation will determine whether Africa participates, whether we participate in digital economy or leads part of it. I know we've looked at a couple of things today, but let me just try to wrap this up. And the purpose is to stir up something in you. So that's the question. How can we control our data laws to benefit more on African society? That's the question. The topics we could look at: digital identity system, privacy concerns, opportunities for African tech entrepreneurs, the role of regional cooperation in digital governance. Now we are asking the question. Let's take a moment to reflect. History shows pattern. If there's something I've learned, is that patterns, if you want to know a man, check his pattern. If you want to understand a woman, check her pattern. If you want to understand the system, check the pattern, which most times are hard to break, except with intentionality and discipline. History shows a pattern. In the colonial era, territory was seized, right? In the industrial era, natural resources were extracted. In the digital era, something less visible is being harvested. It's not yam, it's not cassava, it's not corn, no maize, no beans, no apples. Information. Information is harvested. And unlike oil, data does not move in tankers. Unlike minerals, it does not leave behind empty mines, but it moves constantly. Data moves constantly across networks, across servers, across borders, every second, as we are talking, data is moving. As we are talking, data is moving. And the nations that govern those flows will shape the global economy of the future. Africa's digital future will not be determined simply by how quickly the continent connects to the internet. No, it will be determined by who owns the infrastructure, who writes the rules, and who controls the data. Because sovereignty in the digital age is no longer measured only by borders. Mm. It's measured by bandwidth, by algorithms, by servers. And like I've learned to always say, always ask who benefits, always question, always question, always question, always question the frame, always question the frame. This has been the bold angle, and I am Chioma Lina. Do stay tuned for another time, and make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. God bless you.